Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's live session, proudly brought to you by Dev. I'm Rahima Wasti, Marketing Executive at Dev, and it is my pleasure to host this exciting session. Joining me is Mr. Philip Cutting, the visionary founder of Dev. Philip has consistently demonstrated exceptional leadership and forward-thinking approach to driving innovation within our organization and beyond. Today's session focuses on disrupt or be disrupted, staying ahead in the age of tech innovation with rapid technological advancement reshaping industries and careers. This topic is not only timely but essential as well. So, Philip, it's an honor to have you here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Rahima. It's great to be here. And the pace of innovation that we are experiencing has been unprecedented. And I love it, right? And I think a lot of us do love it. So here's what we're doing it's
Definitely.
forcing individuals and organizations to rethink how we operate. And this includes even me, right? It's been so fast. I even with seeing things coming as much as I can, I
Mhm.
still have to adapt, right? So it's an amazing time. I hope that we can share some insights. They're going to help the rest of us business owners that are focused on providing the maximum value to their clients, the insights that they need to help them be super successful going into 2025.
Absolutely, Phil. So let's start with the basic and with the bigger picture. When we say disrupt or be disrupted, what does that truly entail? Is it a limited technological advancement or does it have a broader implication?
Oh, no way. It's way broader, right? So while
Mhm.
technology offer often drives disruption, it's ultimately about
Mhm.
transformation and providing value. Whether the process, customer experience, or organization model is going to be transformed, we have to take the initiative and take this ride with it, right? It's kind of like there's a tsunami coming in, right? And that's how it feels right now.
Mhm.
It's like we are on the crest of a tsunami or we're behind it, one or the other, right? We're either going to drive that and drive change and revolutionize what we're doing and the experience we're giving to our customers, or we're going to kind of like fall behind it and kind of deal with the flood afterwards.
And that perfectly makes sense. And it's not just business as well. Or an individual level. The need to innovate and adapt is equally critical in today's professional landscape as well. So, talking about skill development, uh, it's a state of heart of staying relevant. Philip, how can professionals identify the most critical skills they need, and what steps should they take to acquire them?
That's such a great question, right? So the starting points, it always begins with yourself.
Mhm.
If you're ever trying to win a race, you don't you don't worry about what the guy beside you is doing or your best friend or the neighbor is running, right? You look at your time and you improve on that,
Yeah.
right? Now it's great to know that yeah, we can physically break a 6 minute mile, right? Back in time, they thought that nobody could run faster than 6 minute miles. And now we're down to 4 or even 3 minutes. I'm not even sure, right? But it just knowing what's possible is cool, but don't go for that ultimate genetic perfect combination of success. Look at yourself, right? Start with that internal self-assessment, identify gaps between the current skills and the future demands,
Mhm.
right? When you're listening to this conversation that we're having here and with some other great minds, way greater than me, you're going to see that there's opportunity in there, and that peak of curiosity should be a
Mhm.
indication of where you need to go. And hopefully
Absolutely.
you're not like the ADHD kind of rabbit that's going around and or squirrel, right? While many of us have a squirrel in us, especially entrepreneurs, look at
Mhm.
what that tingle is and see where it's
Mhm.
aligned with your current mission and see how to go from there. And if there's something inside you that says, gosh, I wonder if I should try this other tangent, right? First of all, look at what it's going to cost you to
Mhm.
derive that tangent. Look at the value and return on that, because sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes you do have to pivot, right? But I say a lot of us pivot way too fast without the sufficient
Mhm.
information. So if you want to pivot, do a couple media campaigns and see if the response
Right.
is way more aggressive than what you're currently receiving. And
Mhm.
if it is, do a little more validation, right? Don't kind of go with some of the statistical mean errors that we often run into when we're trying to verify an idea, or just go with our gut instinct. Take that gut instinct, verify it, use media right now, some advertising, just see how much response, how many kind of response users you get. Put people on a mailing list, and if it evolves, that's great, right? So a little
Mhm.
tangent on how to test new niches, right? If you get that feeling, because I get it often, right? And so I'm sure there's some other entrepreneurs just like me out there that kind of want to go off a little bit too much. My wife will tell you about it. Also,
Right. Yeah.
just I really encourage people to focus on their core technical skill, right? Look at,
Mhm.
hopefully before now you've gone and seen, you've experimented a little bit, and this is super hard if you're just beginning, right?
Mhm.
If you're just a raw beginner, this conversation is a little bit ahead
Mhm.
of you in some ways, because what you need to do is do as many kind of different kind of projects as possible to see what you're interested in. But if you're more experienced and
Right.
you've kind of focused some, which you need to eventually do, so that you can provide higher value than just the regular guy off the street, right? Is focus on those core skills, see where the velocity in the market is taking you, and once you've got some solid technical skills, right? You're among the top
Mhm.
20, 35% people in your industry, then consider to see what it takes to be a thought leader, see what it is to enhance your other soft skills, right?
Mhm.
Well, so in the very beginning, right? Uh, for young men and women, I say, hey, look, focus on technical, right? 70 70 30. Work on some of the soft skills, make sure you can communicate well, go out there, share your idea and communicate some, right? Because you don't want to totally let that antropathy, but you have to focus on the core skill. You have to get really good at something, right? For like 3 or 5 years,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? Now,
So,
I know
yeah.
there's a big part of our audience that's already in this 10, 5, 10, 20 years that are
Mhm.
really good at what they do, right? Now, a lot of
Mhm.
these guys, some of them admit to ourselves, especially the guys in 20 years into it, we've kind of let some of our soft skills go, right? Because we're so good and so in demand, right? But things change quick.
Mhm.
So now there's like, after 10 years of working on something, you're not going to get much
Mhm.
deeper in that if you've really been working on it. Right now, if you've been a little bit lazy and just kind of riding the ride, oh yeah, you got a lot to learn. But if you're really into it and you have that passion, that drive, then you probably dived into that really almost to a master's level degree. Right now, there's the next level where you can go to a doctorate, you're doing research, you're a thought leader, you're all that. But before you consider becoming a PhD in anything, see how good your soft skills are, how you've communicated with, so what you learned with people, how you can help other people, right? All those soft skills
Absolutely.
that go into it are critical for the more experienced guys. And we kind of sometimes don't want to do that, right? But if you want to be able to adapt, you really have to. And they're more important than is obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. That
Um,
is right. And I'd also emphasize that importance of storytelling and digital communication
oh yeah.
for professionals in the roles like marketing. It's about standing out in increasingly noisy digital environment. Would you agree to that? And Phil,
Mm,
that finding a balance between technical and interpersonal skills is the key. It is basically the key. So, yeah, what would you say on that?
I can't agree more, right? The in every industry, there's that core
Mhm.
set of skills, right? You have the technical, but then you need to also be able to have do storytelling so that you can teach, right? You have to have for IT, for example, right? That's my
Mhm.
big between entrepreneurship and IT. Those are my big focus. So I care a lot about security. I care a lot about user experience. I care a lot about storytelling and the ability to get your image across, your message across, so
Mhm.
that you can attract investors, you can attract users, you can actually create a product that a demographic will care about and that will help them become successful for whatever reason they're using that for. So I think you're spot on. And in there, storytelling is one of the most powerful skills. Maybe one of the hardest soft skills.
Certainly. Yeah. So we'll talk about networking now. Networking has evolved dramatically as well in recent years, especially with the shift to a digital platform. How can professionals build and leverage meaningful networks in today's landscape?
So you know my love for networking, right? And today we have to create these strategic connections that provide value. When I'm traveling, and as you know, I happen
Mhm.
to be traveling now. There's a lot of
Mhm.
times I'm at the airport lounge, and I meet somebody who just is amazing, right? Successful in almost every way, but they're always these guys
Mhm.
are looking to improve something, and that's on their mind, right? So when just sometimes by bouncing up to somebody or lighting a cigarette for them or just enjoying a tea with them, right? I get to see how maybe we could work together, or maybe I offer some kind of value and create a friendship or connection. And I'll
Mhm.
like, when you're starting off in your networking growth and your career, right? Like you're kind of like self-centered, right? You're like, well, how do I get value from this person? But when you've been into it a little bit, it's so much easy for you to give away value when you network. And just by this case, I mean networking just by communicating with people, just saying, how do I make this person's life better? Right. And when you have that kind of
Exactly.
mindset, you organically create a beautiful network around you from people that God
Absolutely.
puts you with. So I think if you the earlier you can start and get into it and just give value to people that you meet without kind of expecting anything back, you're going to do way better. Hard to do when you're just beginning your career
Mhm.
because there's lack of confidence, lack of experience, right? And it kind of shines through. And if you're in that position, don't stress. Just be honest with what you do know and don't know, and people
Mhm.
will be attracted to you and they'll appreciate your feedback way better than if you pretend to be something significant. When you are seen for human, but the value you provide is not the kind of global thing you want to be.
Absolutely, that was actually quite valuable perspective from your side. I found that even with the small actions, like thoughtfully engaging with somebody, post on LinkedIn can lead to great conversations and great opportunities as well, just
Yeah,
like you
and I
said.
want you to chase
So
those opportunities, right? Because that's fun,
definitely, yeah,
isn't it? Right? Like,
yeah,
how cool is it
yeah, that
for
gives us a lot of
somebody to
opportunities.
have a challenge, for you to get in there, to play in the mud, right? This is what you just said is my version of me at 7 years old when I was playing the mud and lighting things on fire,
Got you.
right? Now I
So
know
let's
nobody
talk
else
about
had that childhood,
challenges. Yeah,
but that's it. Get in
yeah.
there, connect with people and have fun with it, and you'll see how fun it is.
Great. So since you mentioned challenges, so we're going to talk about it. What are the most common mistakes you see professionals and organizations make when trying to adapt to innovation?
Mm. So, hey, this is a good question. This is a really, really good question. It's a hard question, right? Everybody's going to come in at a different place on this mountain. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see is hesitating, especially nowadays. Waiting too long to
Mm-hmm.
act or invest in change is really problematic. It has the other side of the coin,
Okay.
but if you followed our philosophy of making little steps into things and testing it, then you can do this really well, right? Um, that's one thing. Another is adapting
Okay.
technology without the clear understanding of how it aligns with your business goals, right? So one is I don't
Mm-hmm.
do it. The other is I jump into it because it's shiny, right? So one is I'm scared
Yeah.
of making a mistake or looking bad in front of somebody. This is very common in corporate America. The other is I just see the thing and I'm a squirrel. I'm chasing that, right? Like that squirrel in Ice Age.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it, I see that acorn. I don't care. I'm gonna go for it. And I don't care if I, wake up the dinosaur. Right. I gotta get this. I just do that because it drives me. This is the entrepreneur, right? It's the
Right.
challenge of this is to understand how to test the waters out and to see a little bit of experience and experimentation to make sure you're not going to hurt your brand, you're not going to go overcommit into something, and maybe that you don't undercommit into something, right? These are kind of like the big challenges that we have to go through, and there's a lot of ways to experiment with this so that you can get
Mm-hmm.
to that near equilibrium. I'm going to say like that 25% soft space in between where you're profitable and you're balancing risk with reward.
And that was actually quite a valuable insight. From a marketing perspective, I've also sent business like businesses embrace trends like automation without integrating meaningfully into their strategy, which often leads to wasted effort. So that happens as well. Shifting to a leadership perspective now, how can organizations foster a culture that embraces innovation rather than resisting it?
Oh, that's so fun. Okay. So, my love for innovation, right? And innovation, creativity, and the soul for exploration thrives when organizations create an environment that encourages experimentation, encourages learning,
Mhm.
um, encourages failure in a controlled manner, right? Um, I don't want to see failure where somebody goes off in the cave, comes back in 48, 68, 120 hours, most of a month, right? And then fails. No, I want to see somebody who goes and uh put their heart into it for 2, 4, 8 hours, right? And there's a kind of progression in there as you learn
Mhm.
the psychology behind this. And I'd say the psychology behind this between a guy that can do 2 hours experimentation and the guy that does 8 hours experimentation is the one that has learned to create feedback cycles as early as possible, right? So
Mhm.
here's a good example. If I want to test an idea, right, and I want to do an
Mhm.
experiment, I can, based off of Facebook and Twitter and TikTok, create for $20 or $100, right? Somewhere in there, depending on how aggressive
Mhm.
I want to be, like $20 uh per platform. I can do a lot of experimentation and see how people are responding to it in a way that doesn't reflect my brand, right?
Mhm.
I can create a separate account. I can experiment. I can see what's the virality of this concept. Is it received well without giving up too much information, and without giving up kind of secrets? I can just gauge what the response is. And that allows me to experiment, to learn, to develop so quickly, especially with AI nowadays, right? It's a whole nother paradigm, right? We're in another world. So
Yeah.
with this in mind, we have to give our teams the freedom to test these new ideas and treating failures as learning opportunities or treating poor results as an indication that maybe it's not the wrong idea, but maybe we're approaching it wrong. And what we can learn from
Absolutely.
experiments. Uh, with AI, we can
Definitely.
create content so fast, right? It's insane. One guy is now doing what five guys did before, minimum, right?
Yeah.
And the difference is
Remember
going to be
that.
how do you test that? How do you see what it is? I say, here's what I say. If you have a marketing team, keep the same amount of people, integrate AI,
Mhm.
do testing now. right? Or fire one guy, right? Out of those 5 guys,
Mhm.
fire one that's not performing. I'm sorry, unperformer. You didn't try. You should have tried harder. You should have listened to this podcast, right? And take that take that budget from the guy you fired and put it into marketing. You'll spend 1/10 of his budget in marketing, and you're going to validate all the creativity and curiosity that your other guys are performing, and
Mhm.
you're going to let the rest of the team know that if you're not performing, you have to get on the ship. Yeah.
Well, that was
That said,
completely
please don't be
understandable, and
cruel
I agree to that.
to your poor employees.
Yeah, so employees feel empowered and supported to think outside of the box as well. In my experience, fostering trust and collaboration can unlock incredible potential. That was the other perspective that you were talking about as well. So let's look ahead and what does the future of work look like to you? And how can professionals best prepare for the changes to come?
Hmm. So, the future of work is definitely defined by flexibility, learning
Mhm.
to work with hybrid models, technology, AI, analytics, right? These tools that are very obvious and visual, right? You can keep diving into them in the analytics and logical thinking as you go, but stay high level in the very beginning so you don't get overwhelmed, right? I don't want anybody that listens to
Mhm.
this call and says, "Gosh, I need to go back to school for another 5 years or 3 years to learn how to do this." No, there's visual tools that you can look at. I use Hotjar,
Mhm.
right? I'm not like on my team. I am sure I'm the dumbest guy, right? So I I sit there with my team. We look over the visual graphics with Hotjar and with Google Analytics
Mhm.
and with the Google Tag Management metrics and even Facebook's pixels, the data we get from all that. And we try to the team tries to make it visual for me, first of all. And then we dive
Mhm.
into validate concepts and try to test things. Right. So don't worry about the complex models, right? Don't worry about being that
Okay.
data scientist. Just look at what the tools we have. And for a few bucks a month, you can get tools that are visual and you can dive into it. And that natural curiosity and that learning environment that you're going to give
Mhm.
to your team and the ability for them to experiment, to test their and the I guess I didn't include something, but one thing is to reward success and to be very forgiving of failure, right? So when
Mhm.
you reward success, you give that great bone that says, "Okay, cool. You achieved some success. That was great. Okay, cool. Here's some failure." And it's not like, "Why did you mess this up?" It's, "Okay, what can we learn from that?" And that takes out the sting and that gives motivation, right? So that's a full circle healthy company and philosophy coming into the new age.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is quite exciting to imagine, but it also reinforces the importance of adaptability. For me, staying curious and committed to self improvement feels like it's the most reliable strategy that one can have. And
Yeah.
now moving on to the side where our audience are asking questions from you. So the first one we're going to take is how do you prioritize innovation in your daily work or business?
Oh, so that's a good question. Because I'm kind of the lead and the creative force in my organization,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
I spend most of my time on innovation and diving into things and testing. And I'm the guy that takes a lot of that and I push back on the team. I'm like, "Hey, have you tried this? Have you thought about this?" Right? I've told you before my concept, three guys or girls, right?
Okay.
Working together in the right skill set can take over an industry.
Mm-hmm.
One is the dreamer, the intuitor, the kind of leader, right? The other is the negotiator, the guy that knows how to put together deals and how to bring people into it. And the other is the executor. He knows how to develop, he knows how to get things done. He's very mission oriented, right? With these three guys, you can take over an industry. So if you don't have, but keep in mind, all three guys have technical prowess, technical experience, right? So
Mhm.
if you don't have that deep technical experience, you have to hire these guys until you actually have that, right? That's why I tell a lot of guys, don't try to open a agency in the very beginning.
Mhm.
Go work for somebody for 3 or 5 or 10 years, right? To see what that is and to develop your core skills and your core technical talents, right? While I don't want to discourage people from investing in entrepreneurship, there's a place where you can really get hurt in this, both you and your clients, if you're kind of overstepping yourself without that experience, right? So there's a balance to it. There's ways to handle all that. And one of the biggest ways in the very beginning is to hire that entire 3-guy team. The next is that 5-guy team, but let's focus on the 3. So you decide if you can fill any of these roles and you have the technical power, or you can
Mhm.
give enough direction. You give this kind of um you give this kind of guidance, right? And from there, your other guys have to see, does it make sense, right? So you have your dreamer, and he creates the idea, he shares that idea with the negotiator and the executor.
Mhm.
Those two together need to go and validate the concept, because that dreamer is a little bit too high in the cloud, right? He's kind of over inspired sometimes, right? And he's
Okay.
ready to kind of question the idea, but he's not the right guy to go and validate it, right? In my opinion, the
Mhm.
best guy that goes and validates this, not the negotiator, because he can sell anything to anybody, right? But the developer to go create a landing page and or some marketing, right? That guy that's the executor, go out, execute a little bit, see the feedback you get. If you get good feedback for the idea, now you have a chance for the negotiator to go out there, try to see if you can sell a little bit of it, any of it, make that mailing list, bring that negotiator in, make that mailing list, get some responses back from that mailing list, right? Now
Mhm.
you've had the full initial cycle to validate an idea and to limit the risks that you have in innovation and business concepts. And this is where you kind of balance the joy of that creating the new idea with the risk of losing a lot of money or perhaps damaging your reputation with a bad idea.
I
Does that
definitely will
did I
do.
kind of balance the concept of how to do innovation in your daily business in a micro way? It's really small. Like you can spend $10 on marketing just to see if the idea
Mhm.
has traction.
Absolutely. You are very right about that. And moving on to the question, that is, what is your go-to source of staying updated or on tech innovations?
Mm, so very good question. The I like to keep track of what Apple does, their new releases, and what Google does.
Mhm.
So between the two of them, material design and human focused design, the you have a lot of creativity, and the technologies we can see where they're trending. Um, I like to also look at Asia to see where they're going with their technology, because they kind of tend to be ahead of us with some technologies,
Mhm.
while we sometimes in the West develop it a little bit better and make it more useful. Uh, very interesting, the dynamics between these cultures, the East and West, and I wish they were married together better, because there's so much talent on both sides of the culture, right? Both cultures create different values that help
Mhm.
drive business in different and meaningful ways. So I can't say one is better than the other. They're both really very interesting. So if we look at it from a humanistic approach, I one of the things I try to do is bring in diversity, as long as it's not conflicting diversity, right? Um, if
Absolutely.
I have, yeah, if I have a team that is more spiritual, right? I'm not going to kind of bring in somebody that is antipathetic to that, opposite of that, right? Because that's just going to create a wedge, right? But I'm going to bring in somebody that is maybe if somebody's more conservative, I'm going to bring in somebody or influences that are more liberal to test the concepts and try to drive
Mhm.
change in smaller ways, and maybe not even drive change, right? Because sometimes change isn't good. right? Sometimes I
Mhm.
just want to see, did we test our ideas and have we thought through it? Did we kind of go through some perspectives? But it's hard to do this without creating conflict inside teams and giving anxiety,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of easy ways to do it without having people hurting their feelings about the on any regards to that. So I think this is something that has to be done. People should be open to that. You warm them up to it.
You're absolutely right about that. Moving on to the other question, that is, how do you personally adapt to fast changing technology? That was
I
more or
am
less just like the previous question.
so this is about me, right? This sounds like you personally. So I'm going to give you my answer.
Mhm.
Um, and then
All
I'll
right.
have some fun in a second. So for me, I love it, right? Chaos is fun. Part of me is a chaos monkey. I like creativity.
Mhm.
I like challenge myself. I am open to all kinds of insanity, right? This is something I've developed over the years, and the more different and interesting responses I get, kind of the more fun it is, right? Not everybody's like that. There's a certain person that this is, right? And that's me. There's another person that's more conservative, more methodical. They have to think through things. They have to think about it,
Mhm.
right? They have to be able to see if it fits within their comfort zone. And if it doesn't, they put in a bucket of like, not for me. Right. So if you're in that bucket, I think there all you have to do to be very successful in this is recognize that this is your kind of character traits or how much
Mhm.
on that scale you are. If you're way down that scale, right? If it matters, right? Now, sometimes you
Yeah.
may be so well set that you don't care. You're a millionaire, you have a trust fund, you don't care. You can be as off the wall as you want. But if you have to deal with reality in a way that provides food for the family and the kids and the next generation, then consider just consider that and see if there's room for you to comfortably expand your scope and talent and the influences that you're able to consider or even debate, right? Nothing wrong with having values, sticking with them until you die, right? But being able to argue that and talk about it and not get offended at the point of discussion where somebody asks you a question,
Mhm.
right? Like notice that somebody just asked a question and you're already off the hook and you're ready to smack the grandchild, then you chill back out a little bit and say, okay, cool. What's driving this discomfort in me? And to recognize that
Yeah.
that recognition is the key to being flexible at a very early stage.
That you're absolutely right about. So moving on to the other question, what is the most disruptive tech trend you've seen this year?
Mm, okay, so let's dive
Mhm.
into. mm, I think we have to dive into IoT and not
Mhm.
just the Internet of Things, but all things internet. Right now, we don't have just the IoT devices. We have cloud devices. We have Cloud 2.0. We have devices that are ultimately connectivity, right, and
Mhm.
affecting change. So we have a huge amount of change in this field, and which is
Okay.
actually gone almost unheard of and unrecognized because we have so much um, AI change this year, right? We have in people going out of jobs and industries basically being put out of business because people haven't been able to adapt to it
Mhm.
fast, right? And we now have the time place where expertise is in one way very cheap. Like low level expertise has become almost free, and that's amazing. So we are now in a time in history where knowledge is cheaper
Mhm.
than wisdom or physical work.
Right.
So,
That
yeah, I
was
don't know what
great.
the word on that.
That was a great answer. So, what's the most? Let me get you another question. How do you personally adapt to fast changing. Okay. So, how do you prioritize innovation in your daily work or business?
Okay, cool. Um, I don't know that I prioritize innovation in a way that most people
Mm-hmm.
would. So I'm kind of a little bit off the wall on this personally. I see innovation as a way to help support my clients and my friends. When I'm looking at business, my
Mm-hmm.
question is, how do I make this business better? Not what can I do? What's my talent scope? Is this for me? When I'm consulting the company, right? At the end of this call that I have, I may say, "Wow, okay, here's what you need to do." Right? Good luck, go for it. And then they're like, "Okay, cool, let's do it." I'm like, "No, no, I mean, good luck, and I just gave you all the advice I can. Go find somebody based off what I recommended." And that's sometimes hard for people because they think I just sold them on it, but all I did was share
Mm-hmm.
my wisdom and experience with them, but I'm not the right person. So by acknowledging your limits, right, and being
Okay.
and deciding, do you want to expand your limits or do you want to dig into what you know better? That's going to help you manage that natural state. And everybody's ability to do that is very different. But also, I caution agencies and developers and
Okay.
creatives to be honest with
Mhm.
their clients and friends, and consider like all their clients as a potential friend that they wouldn't want to hurt in the first place, and be upfront and
Mhm.
say, "Hey, I'm not that skill set, right? I'm curious about it. Maybe I like it. I would love to do it, but right now we're like 10% on that." So
Absolutely.
that honesty is going to help you balance the innovation that you can take with the product delivery and service you can provide. I think just comes with being honest and with yourself. If you're very curious about something, chase that though, right? That comes under technical skill set development generally.
Well, that was a great perspective from your end. And the last question that we are going to have is, what role does a leadership play in navigating disruption?
What role does what play?
What role does leadership play in navigating a disruption?
Mm. So the role that innovation plays in disruption is that you have to be
Leadership.
ready. Oh, leadership. I'm sorry, I heard the question wrong.
Yeah,
Leadership
leadership.
is the basis of. Hmm, okay, two sides of this coin. A good leader
Mhm.
can take a really terrible team and make them perform 80%, right? That's the power of
Mhm.
a real leader. But sometimes it's not about the leader. The good team will take a poor leader and hit that 90, 100% anyways because they can perform, right? But here's the thing, a good leader with a good team doesn't just do 100%. He creates new standards, new energy, new passion, new drive. He creates industries, he creates change, right? So
Absolutely.
leadership changes the world. And I think leadership is at least 60% developed. There is some natural tendency to it, right? And I don't know what those secrets are. For me, I think it's um I don't know. Like sometimes it might be just like you're narcissist enough, or you're creative enough, or you're curious enough, or you really have that driving factor,
Mhm.
right? But there's something in you that's willing to take risks, right? That leadership needs to inspire those risks. And if you have the right team and the right clients, you can do that. But you have
Okay.
to balance that with learning to see early on if you're on track or not.
Absolutely. That was a great perspective on that. So, Phil, thank you so much for sharing such valuable insights with us today. Before we conclude, do you have any advice for our audience?
Thank you, Rahima. So my advice is simple. Embrace change as opportunity, not as a threat, right? There is no change in the world that's going to depreciate your human value. Equip yourself with the skills to
Mhm.
lead, not just follow, because all of us have inspirations where if we were a little bit more honest with ourselves, we could lead some change in there. And it doesn't have to mean that we're behaving like leaders or that we are leading, right? But by inspiring people and being true to ourselves and not caring if what we think is a little bit quirky to some people, right? Let your own networks and your own friends and the environment that you create see if
Mhm.
you can be successful and lead and encourage growth, right? Because until you try, you don't know, right? And sometimes, even if you try and it doesn't work well, it doesn't mean that you're not a valuable person, that you aren't
Mhm.
amazing, and still that you're not the image of God, right? You still are all that. But sometimes you just have to work
Absolutely.
on some skills and to have a little bit of failure and to learn from those and get with that network
Mhm.
that is going to allow that and to encourage growth. And most importantly, don't wait for the perfect moment. Oh, this makes me so nuts. Act with integrity, act now. When you have the idea, go with it. Ideas have a time and place and purpose. And if you fail to ride that, God will give that beautiful idea to somebody else with bigger kahunas.
Great. I love your perspective, and I love your touch to everything that you say. So thank you so much, and thanks to everybody who joined us today. And stay tuned for more insightful session from Line Pro Dev, and let's continue to navigate the future together with confidence and purpose. So stay curious and have a great day. Goodbye.
Thank you guys. Have a good one. Bye bye.